My next guest is maybe the most powerful man in Washington that you may not have heard of. He is seen as the architect of President Trump's scorched earth campaign to slash spending, upend the federal government. And here with me now is President Trump's director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russ Vought. Thank you so much for being here. I want to talk about what has been going on with DOGE and what Elon Musk has already done. He says it was $175 billion in cuts, and these are cuts to funding and programs that Congress already passed, already signed into law, the law of the land, before you took office. You say that you're going to submit about $9 billion in cuts this week for Congress to approve to make those cuts that you've already done official, largely in foreign aid and public broadcasting. But you're hearing from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle that they want you to submit approval for all of the cuts that you've done through DOGE. Will you?
We might. We want to see how this first bill does. We want to make sure it's actually passed. It's the first of many rescissions bills. We may not actually have to get a Congress to pass the.
It's really, it's good to see that this is actually being taken seriously, right? I was really worried that these cuts and stuff like that were just going to go by the wayside. Especially, in the end, they're still spending way too much money on defense. Like, I think a lot of MAGA is along that line where, we didn't want to see $1 trillion going to the Pentagon. So we're kind of disappointed in that end, but at least it seems like, if what he's saying is true, they're starting with the $9 billion. They're going to see how it goes and go forward. I really hope that they can try to codify all the cuts that DOGE has put forward.
Rescissions bills.
Why?
Some we have executive tools. We have impoundment, that 200 years of presidents had the ability and the recognition that they had the ability to spend less than the ceiling. If you have $100 million that the Congress says we want you to go and use for a particular use and you can do it less, for 200 years that was totally appropriate. And since the 1970s that has changed and has led to massive waste, fraud, and abuse. Secondly, the very Impoundment Control Act itself allows for a procedure called pocket rescissions later in the year to be able to bank some of these savings without the bill actually being passed. It's a provision that has been rarely used, but it is there, and we intend to use all of these tools. We want Congress to pass it where it's necessary. We also have executive tools, and that is something we're going to be working with Congress. But it's very important to pass this bill and to see whether there is a will in both the House and the Senate to secure the votes for it.
Let me just unpack a couple of things that you said. First, you said that there is 200 years of precedent of presidents taking what Congress passed, and of course, people who are watching this know that the Constitution says that it is Congress that has the power of the purse, which is why we're even having this discussion.
They have the power.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about. So there's some dispute about the 200 years, but most importantly, a law passed in 1974 because of this dispute that you mentioned, the Impoundment Act. And so because of that law, which has now been in place for more than 50 years, it is the requirement of the executive branch, except for in situations where you're having discussions with Congress, to implement what is signed into law. I know you don't believe that that is constitutional. So are you just doing this in order to get the Supreme Court to rule that unconstitutional?
We're certainly not taking impoundment off the table. We're not in love with the law. It's a law that came after 200 years of precedent in history at the lowest moment of the executive branch.
Congress says that you're just breaking the law.
Well, they're wrong. We're not breaking the law. Every part of the federal government, each branch, has to look at the Constitution themselves and uphold it. And there's tension between the branches. Yeah. And I don't doubt that Congress is going to make accusations. Some of them come by their own watchdogs, but those watchdogs have been historically wrong. And that's not going to stop us from moving forward to bank the DOGE cuts.
I want to sort of bring this up bigger picture a little bit, because this is part of a very clear strategy that you have had for years and years and years in order to really cut the federal government and do it in any way you can, and also to pull as much power into the executive branch as possible. You're very open about that. One of the things that you said in 2023 was specific to federal workers. I want to play that for our viewers.
We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want to put them in trauma.
Is that your goal as OMB director?
Look, I love how you cherry-picked the quote on trauma. What I was referring to there was the bureaucracy. We do believe there's weaponized bureaucracy. We do believe that there are people who have been part of administrations that are fundamentally woke and weaponized against the American people. When you have the EPA put a 77-year-old Navy veteran named Joe Robertson in jail for doing ponds to fight wildfires on his lawn, that's not just the FBI, it's the EPA. And we do want to defund and put those bureaucracies out of business. But I have great people at OMB. There are great people at the FAA.
It's pretty interesting how they took that clip. I'm also noticing they are editing this interview. And I would be interested to see the interview in its entirety. I haven't watched this yet. I usually don't watch things before they come out. If you guys can subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you like what's going on. Let's see the rest of this and see where it goes. But it seems a little odd that they're releasing this online edited. You would think that if it's online, you have you can release as much as or as little as you like, and we have the bandwidth to take the entire interview. So I really wonder what they just edited out in this particular interview, but we'll take a look and see if I can do a little bit of digging on that.
There are great people at the NIH who are doing hard work and important public service activities, and I think it's important to provide the full context of what people like me have said in the past. But we're not going to be receive pushback from the notion that we're going to dramatically change the deep, woke, and weaponized administrative state.
I want to talk about what's going to happen in the Senate this week, which is the president's spending and tax cut bill. Multiple Republican senators say that they can't support the bill as written for lots of reasons. One of the reasons is because they think it really adds to the deficit. Another person who said that was Elon Musk. Listen to what he said.
I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the...
I'm going to be really interested to see what he says here, because a lot of MAGA is along this line. It's just what I said before. Very disappointed to see the massive amount of spending that's been going to the DOD. The Pentagon's getting, like I said, $1 trillion. That's unprecedented. And the fact that we're scaling all this stuff back, but then blowing up the the budget on the defense side, a lot of people that supported Trump, they're a little upset about this. So I'm interested to see what he's going to say in regards to this.
The DOGE team is doing.
I love Elon. This bill doesn't increase the deficit or hurt the debt. In fact, it lowers it by $1.4 trillion. What some of the watchdogs have done is they have used CBO's artificial baseline, which doesn't allow and assume that current tax law will be extended because of sunsets that are in the law. They don't do that with suspending. It is totally something that would be foreign to any common sense person who comes and looks at how we budget in this country. And so when you assume the extension of the president's tax relief from 2017, this budget or this bill, and it's really a reconciliation bill. It's not really a budget bill. It is using a budget process. This is a $1.4 trillion over 10 years deficit reduction. It's $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. Obviously, we have a little bit of spending in there as well for border and defense. But that is the biggest mandatory savings package that we have seen since the 1970s, 1997. It's very historic.
So you have your work cut out for you to explain that to not just Elon Musk, but to people who actually have a vote in the Senate in your own party. The other reason why we're seeing some pushback is because of the...
You see, again, it's interesting, the way he's phrasing it, and I'm still not totally understanding, what he's talking about or where he's getting this information from. The fact that he's saying it's going to save that amount of money over the next 10 years. Again, that should be something that's easily digestible to myself and to other people, and it doesn't seem to be, right? And when everyone in the administration is boasting about a $1 trillion, budget for the Pentagon, it's kind of hard for people to take a look and see what the savings are going to be, and to say, hey, listen, the savings could be that much greater if all you did was keep the Pentagon's budget as it was before.
The Medicaid cuts that were passed by the House and that are going to go into the Senate. There was a town hall, which I'm sure you saw. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst was asked, it was pretty raucous, about the Medicaid cuts, and she responded by saying people were saying that people are going to die, and she said, we're all going to die. But the question that she was getting from constituents were concerns about Medicaid, food stamps, and other government support programs leading to people dying in premature deaths. What do you say to those concerns?
I think they're totally ridiculous. This is AstroTurf. This bill will preserve and protect the programs, the social safety net, but it will make it much more common sense. Look, $1 out of every $5 or $6 in Medicaid is improper. We have illegal immigrants on the program. We have able-bodied working adults that don't have a work requirement that they would have in TANF or even SNAP. And those are something that's very important to institute. That's what this bill does. No one will lose coverage as a result of this bill.
That's not what Josh Hawley, who is not exactly a liberal Democrat, said. He said it's wrong to cut health care for the working poor, and that's what we're talking about here with Medicaid.
Well, we continue to work with people in the Senate as to working them through what the specifics of the bill, what it does and what it doesn't do. We'll continue to do that, and I think at the end of the day, the Senate will have a resounding vote in favor of a substantially similar bill.
Before I let you go, one of the things that you have become known for is that you were one of the architects of Project 2025. And one of the things that was noteworthy during the campaign was that President Trump really distanced himself. He said he doesn't know anything about it. It's not something that he had any knowledge of. But obviously you did, and you're now there. And I just want to show our viewers just some of what was on your checklist. A lot of them have been checked off from Project 2025. There are others that are kind of in the pipeline, including ending funding for PBS, NPR, and many other things. Is it fair to say that what you are doing now is, in part, enacting this very document that you and your colleagues worked very hard on, Project 2025?
No, of course not. The only people that are delusional about whether the president is the architect, the visionary, the originator of his own agenda that he was very public about throughout the campaign, in which you are seeing him in rapid fashion go through and accomplish, are his adversaries. And I think it's one of the reasons why you had to have the last segment with the leader of the Democrats, who are in such a disarray, because instead of talking about the real issues of the forgotten men and women, they're coming up with these fake news stories.
I'm not suggesting that he's not in charge. I'm just saying that now it's pretty clear that what he wants to do and what you planned are dovetailing.
I think the president was very clear with his agenda, and he is going forward with that agenda, and he has been at the helm and the originator of all of these ideas.
Okay, last question. Other recommendations from Project 2025: eliminating the Fed, privatizing Fannie and Freddie, banning medication, abortion. Are those still on the agenda?
What's on the agenda is what the president has put on the agenda.
Those all sound pretty good to me. I mean, yeah. The interesting thing about Project 2025 is that the majority of people haven't read it, and it was used as a, as a cudgel to hit Trump over the head with. You know, because some of the things, you know, let's be honest, there are some things on the 2025 agenda that were, you know, just out of the norm, out of the ordinary. But on the whole, if you actually sit down and read the bullet points of what it is they wanted, not that crazy, not that crazy of an idea. But that's it for this, guys. Give me a like, give me a share, give me a subscribe. Drop down in the comments, and if you leave a comment, I'll answer it. If you want to have a discussion, we'll have a discussion in the comments. Thank you guys a lot for coming out, and we'll see you again in the next video. Thanks a lot.